Thanks, Jim. Cybercrime has been pegged recently at a staggering $1 trillion cost to the world and the industry as a whole. With recent reports showing the average cost of a data breach is on the rise at nearly $4 million US. $4 million just for one data breach. And this is just a drop in the bucket. We're seeing this spread worldwide. It's, in fact, twice that amount, over $8 million US to our neighbors down south. This is a global pandemic on its own, cybercrime. What we're also seeing with FortiGuard Labs is that the average time to contain a breach now is increasing. It's not decreasing. It's gone from in 2019 from about 220 days to 280 days in 2020. Cybercrime is a global problem. It affects all of us. That's why it's imperative that we collaborate and participate in events like the MapleSEC Satellite Summit. I have 10 years of experience building collaborative platforms in the industry, helping with these, including the Cyber Threat Alliance, Interpol Gateway, the World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity platform. And it's always great. It's always great to have good, like-minded and bright individuals together in one place to try to talk about the rise of the threats and how we can combat them. We can talk about things like the risk, the sophistication. We're seeing exploitation and blackmail cases with ransomware now, targeted ransom that are crippling, revenue services, causing organizations to bleed millions of dollars a day. And we're also seeing whaling attacks now going after chief financial officers for business email compromise. These are all just parts of the large problem as a whole. And so Fortinet is pleased to be able to sponsor a panel discussion that is going to bring together an ethical hacker, a 2020 Top Women in Cybersecurity honoree, and a CIO from a major university to share ideas on the horizon and how we can prepare. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Proctor, IT World Canada's VP of Communications, to lead the panel. You can take it away now, Steve.
Thanks, Derek. I think you've set the stage marvelously. So let's get straight into it. I'm pleased to be here with three cybersecurity veterans to discuss this topic. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and answer this question. What's the one new and emerging threat or adaptation that you see coming in the new year? And why don't we start with you, Kimberly?
Thanks very much. So I'm Kimberly St. Pierre. I'm Director of Strategic Accounts with Tanium, and I'm based in Vancouver, BC. I think I'm not going to call it a new threat, but I certainly think it is emerging, and I think it's something that is not given enough focus and attention is the basics, is basic IT hygiene. Quite often when we're reading about breaches or events in the news, it comes back to something very simple that wasn't done. So I think having a focus on greater IT hygiene is going to be something that organizations are really going to need to focus on.
My name is Terry Cutler. I'm the CEO and founder of Cyology Labs in Montreal. So I totally agree with Kimberly. The other issue that we're going to be focusing on is especially the whole working from home. This pandemic isn't going away anytime soon. So companies need to beef up their employees' home networks as well. So they have to start looking at new technologies, new threat management systems. That's going to help them keep their employees safe at home.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Barr. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, or SAIT, in Calgary, Alberta. For us, the emergent threat that is coming in is via third party. We are almost fully cloudified now, or partnered out with third-party vendors, probably in the dozens. And the SolarWinds attack in November, December has really raised the threat level of our partnerships. And when a company like a Microsoft or numerous departments within the U.S. government are compromised, you know that it's real. So I would say for us, that's something that we are working really hard on right now and keeping an eye on. A lot of people that we work with have been compromised, and a lot of folks like the U.S. government are being told, rip and replace your entire system. There's no patching, there's no fixing, you can't antivirus it, rip and replace.
Every morning on Cybersecurity Today, I hear of a new gang, a new threat, a new ransomware kind of thing. Is that real?
So definitely supply chain attacks are going to be on the rise. And I really foresee a shortage in cybersecurity experts. So we're already short staffed as it is. And as these attacks are really ramping up, I think experts are going to be in short demand, especially now at 2020. the cybersecurity, the criminals had a chance to, uh, we'll say, hone their game, and 2021 is just going to be even worse.
And I think when you think of, where they're going to need to focus and what they're going to start wanting to spend some time on is reducing complexity. When you think of how complex an organization is with a, potentially global distributed remote workforce, the challenge of managing multiple different enterprises that might be under one global brand, then you tie in, compliance and regulatory requirements into the mix. That level of complexity is off the charts just from a business standpoint, never mind all of the technology tools that they're trying to cobble together to make things work. So I think where a lot of focus is going to be is on simplicity, driving more efficiencies within the organization, and back to that people, process, and technology, especially with the talent shortage. So I think a lot of organizations are going to try to drive that complexity out of their organizations where possible in multiple different means.
So we were talking about complexity and how, everybody's got firewalls all over the place now, and we've got our endpoint security and stuff like that. What are the potential alternatives to that? Is there a moving to a trustless that works?
Because our environment is growing in complexity, oftentimes even beyond our control. If you want to talk about what used to be called shadow IT, I'm toying with ideas of what would a trustless environment look like, where we basically assume that everyone is hostile, even though they're not, but just assume that they are to make things simpler. But of course, is it really simple? Now, blockchain is an idea, but it's not a high speed transactional system. But as an idea of encrypting everything, so where you, the consumer, you, the student, are in control of your own information. But again, that just adds more complexity. So that's a consideration.
You have to understand something. Cybersecurity is not about convenience, right? So obviously when you start bringing in these technologies, it's going to cause a lot of disruption for the non-technical end users, right? They have to go jump through so many hoops, two-factor authentication. I mean, they're already struggling with this now. So it's um, it's going to require a lot of awareness training for the end users for sure to use this technology.
I want to jump to a couple of other threats that are out there that are emerging that people are talking about. One's the Internet of Things. Some people have called it the Wild West still because there isn't enough security protocols built into those things, but it's a market that's going to grow to 1.1 trillion by 2026. How high of a concern should that be on an organization's cybersecurity radar? And Kim, you're smiling at that, so you go first.
So, what bugs me most about IoT is I really believe that the device manufacturers have gotten off very easy for a lot of years. I believe they need to take more responsibility to ensure that those devices can be easily, and I say really easily, secured right out of the box. For example, making sure that those systems or the devices can be easily managed, easily patched, easily secured by general IT or security teams, and not having to rely on that device manufacturer to do something. And you see a lot of proprietary IoT device systems in, say, a manufacturing facility. We're starting to see some proposed legislation changes, which has to happen. There's really nothing else that would encourage these organizations that develop those IoT devices to comply if we don't see legislation.
Back in the 90s, used to have an engineer going around from sensor to sensor and manually taking the readings, right? But now fast forward to 2000, they had the genius idea was, well, if we all interconnect this thing, we can get the readings all quicker in real time. But these devices were never meant to be connected to the internet. These operational technology devices are made for a specific purpose, right? There's no hard drives on these things. There's very limited storage. You can't put antivirus on this thing. You can't put EDR. So so now you're left with technology that's probably completely obsolete, unsupported, and you still got to carry this around because you can't just rip and replace this technology. So now you're bringing it into a more complex world where these devices could get hacked and controlled. I mean, look what happened in Florida, right, with that water treatment plant. So this it's a whole new world of headache coming towards us right now.
My favorite story is about the Las Vegas casino that was robbed when they got in through the thermometer in the fish tank. That's
Oh
just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so another threat that's out there that people talk about is cloud jacking. We're very much into a cloud environment, and it's actually tapped to be one of the most prominent threats in the next 3 years. Can you just tell me a little bit about cloud jacking and what we should be doing or what the organization should be doing to pay attention to it?
From what I've seen, many of the incidents, if not most of the incidents, are caused by poor hygiene. So could be misconfiguration of the cloud environment. And talking about hygiene again, I believe that it's not just for traditional IT assets. That's really for, it needs to be mandatory for cloud as well. So when you start thinking about what an organization needs to do is have that real-time visibility into their cloud environment, know where they're vulnerable, know if there's been any configurations that have been changed and that have suddenly exposed them. When you think of a traditional environment and how many people on a team may be touching that cloud environment, if they're doing any kind of development work or if they're, tweaking something or trying to, have different systems talking to one another or integrating or any updates that they're doing, quite often they're making changes that they don't even realize they've now left the front door open. So back to that hygiene piece, it needs to be treated just as any other IT asset from a visibility and a security standpoint.
We, like I said, we have dozens of partners that we work with in our whole ecosystem. So so of course we have legal contractual SLAs and all that, but there's a lot of weasel clauses in there. So I wouldn't be too sure like, oh, everything's covered, I'm good, my cyber insurance policy, I can sleep just fine. Read your cyber insurance policy. Chances are pretty good if you need to make a claim against your policy, you probably can't make a claim because you probably have a pre-existing condition, as they call it in the US, about some door that you left open or some question that you didn't ask or some piece of paper you forgot to get initialed or whatever. So it's up to you. Third party, third party risk management, you got to know your vendors. You have to have it. But again, there's another relationship you want to have. So they oftentimes will have what they call a breach coach. So if you get breached, they'll assign you a breach coach. This is someone that we've been talking to. We make a point of talking to our insurance company, the breach coach, to actually go through our simulations and to go to do our business continuity planning. There's another example of a vendor that we work with to go walk us through what you do and what are some of the preventative things we could do.
I think what's also going to be coming down on the insurance side in the future is that if you do not have EDR technology in your environment, we might not even insure you, because some of these claims, they start at $60,000, can easily go to $300,000, and it's just bringing your environment back just prior to the breach. There's no improvements on this thing, so it gets very very costly. So that's why cyber insurance is extremely important for folks that don't have it or is on the fence about getting it. You don't want to be stuck with a $300,000 bill because within 6 months your business can go under.
Everybody's still talking about ransomware. Everybody still needs to know. There are gangs out there that are working together on ransomware projects, and some I understand are even developing a sort of a malware as a service option. How much have you seen how much have you seen ransomware evolve, and where do you think it's going?
Well, on the ransomware side, we started seeing some real evolution with ransomwares like Maze, which has a double extortion piece in it. So what happens is that the cyber criminals will get into your environment, ransomware it, and if you are able to recover from your backups, well, they've already extracted a copy of your data. Now they could say, you know what? That's good that you recovered your data, but if you don't pay us, we're going to leak it. So the bad guys have a backup plan too.
Anybody want to talk in terms of what about the issue of whether a company should pay the ransomware or not? Is there anybody feel strongly on that regard?
I think again, it's going to vary from company to company. As if you have your data backed up, maybe you don't need to pay the ransom, or if your backups are not also being held for ransom and your data is encrypted, then maybe you're not at so much risk. But I think there's really no guarantee that even if you do pay the ransom that you're going to get your data back. They may sell it anyway. Every company is gonna be different, but then also tying back into your in your insurance policy, are there certain criteria in your policy that dictate whether ransom will be paid or not? If they can't pay that ransom out of their business savings account, if they can't do that, then is insurance even an option to do that? So I think every company is going to be different depending on their industry, the business health of their actual organization, and the size of the organization. So I don't have a advice of whether you should or shouldn't, because I think every scenario is going to be so unique.
The takeaway is it's massively disruptive, and you're pretty much, you're always going to feel forever compromised, even if you pay and you everything goes back to being all nice and whatever. You're always going to be compromised, and so that's why it's like, just man, oh man, do the upfront planning, do the upfront work, and work with your users on, please don't click on links.
So when you get hit with a ransomware, you're down for a minimum of 100 hours. And what happens is that once the ransomware has gotten in, it caught a copy of the skeleton keys from Active Directory, which means that they can come in and re-ransom you at any time. So sometimes, depending on the size of your environment, it might be faster and cheaper to pay for the ransom than it is to rebuild the network and get it back up and running. And even if you do pay the ransom, there's no guarantee you're going to get the key back. You're going to get the key. And even if you do get the key, you still got to like decrypt your data, make a backup of it, rip and replace your environment again because you can't trust the environment, and then restore the data. So it gets extremely expensive. People don't realize how expensive a ransomware recovery is.
But I want to bring that back to the last question I want each of you to answer is, so what do you think the cybersecurity mistake that people will be making 5 years from now that they shouldn't be making?
I think it's going to be even worse with deepfake going on. I think deepfake voice and deepfake video, deepfake voice of, hey, it's the some senior person in my organization. I think that spoofing for people who are in a rush or whatever. I think we're just going to have super clever ways of being compromised. So it's like clicking on links like 5 or 10 years ago. It's going to be something like that. Yeah.
One of the things that I still see often is that a lot of organizations aren't seeing that cybersecurity, a healthy cybersecurity posture, really needs to be that living, breathing organism, which is an ever evolving journey. There seems to be a lot of activity done after a specific incident or when something happens or is brought to the board's attention, for example. But I think that constant evolution, that it's never a checkbox, that it's never completed, and then better collaboration and communication between different business and technology units, right up to the C-suite and the board level. There's still a massive breakdown in communication, and there's that one skill set that is very rare. And some cybersecurity and technology leaders possess this, but they're maybe only one of the people that do. Is that ability to communicate true business risk down into technology and not have that breakdown in the lines of communication and that lost in translation. So I think the collaboration and the communication piece is still going to be very high on people's radar.
Yeah, I think we're still going to be coming down to the same problem, which is human error. Somebody's going to wake up, didn't have enough coffee, didn't get enough sleep. He's not going to pay attention, click on something he's not supposed to, reveal the information, and give away the keys to the kingdom. That's why you need to have the zero trust, stuff in place to really your parachute, your cyber parachute in case there's a problem.
Well, I like to think that the audience has learned a lot of stuff today from this panel. So I thank you very much for being with us. I look forward to speaking to you again. I'm now going to throw it back to Derek and for the rest of the show. Thank you very much, panel.
Thanks, Steve. And thank you to Terry, Michael, and Kimberly for your observations. That was an amazing discussion. There's lots to unpack here, and I hope that if you have questions, you'll raise them during the workshop a bit later.